Hello everybody, my name is Sean Boyle and I want to show you guys how to use OBS to help your presentation skills. OBS is open broadcaster software and the program is OBS Studio. You can find it at obsproject.com, and depending on what kind of computer you have, you can download the Windows, Mac, or Linux version. It installs just like any old Windows or Mac software does install, so it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't cost anything, it's free, it's very powerful. So you might ask yourself, why would I want to do that? Why don't I just go through and use the recording tab on PowerPoint, record the slideshow or do some screen recording? You can, there's absolutely nothing wrong with those, but in my opinion, OBS is so much more powerful and there's so much more that you can do with it that you might go through and enjoy the options that you have. And if you really like PowerPoint, you still might want to use OBS in front of a green screen so you can do a full-size live presentation, just like you're right there. I find, it always amazes me, I find new things with OBS every time I use it. For example, and I'm not going to get into how to do it on this video, I will on next ones, but through OBS you can go through and bring in different desktops or laptops so you can view what's happening on different computer screens. That works well with what I do, teaching automotive. I can do a presentation and I can have the actual laptop image from a scope running on a vehicle right there in the presentation. So I'm not taking a camera and aiming it at that. I'm going to get a high quality the actual display of that laptop or that PC. So another thing that you can do is you can bring cell phone footage into your recording. So somebody, if they call you using an NDI program, and a program that supports NDI, like Skype, I'm going to use Skype for example, that they could be across the country. They call you on Skype, and using their cell phone, they could be recording themselves, and you could bring that right into your recording. So you could do interview style recordings right there, professional looking, KVS 12 at 9 o'clock, making something look really neat by putting the person you're interviewing up in the corner. So those are some advanced things. I will show you how to do that on a separate video. What this is really about is showing you some simple things. Like if you've never used OBS, never used a screen recorder before, when you first open it, you might think there's a bunch of things going on, but it's actually pretty simple. First, if we take a look, we got this menu structure on the top. It's just like any old program, you're going to have your menus. And one thing that you'll notice under files, there's not a new, open, or save as. They put all that stuff under scene collection. So if I want to create a scene collection, if I want to create a new one, I just click new. And if I want to duplicate maybe the one I'm in right now, I hit duplicate and then rename it. I can rename the one I'm in, I can remove it, or if I've got on different machines, I can import and export my scenes. And that kind of makes it handy. It's a little bit weird, it's a little bit different, because if I close this program right now, it won't ask me if I want to save anything. It already knows what's in there is what's in there. So when I close it, it closes, and when I open it, it reopens with exactly the last way it was set up. So if you start changing things here, you're actually changing that scene. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll go through and create a duplicate scene, and that way I can go through and then rename it, and then I can modify them, and then I'll have separate scenes for whatever presentation I'm trying to put together. Now when you first start out, under scenes and sources, you'll see scene 1, but you won't see anything else. There'll be no sources, and there'll only be this one scene. So you have to start by adding sources, and you can rename scene 1 to whatever you want. You right click on it and hit rename, and then we can go ahead and call that, we can go ahead and name that main. And then, like I said before, there'll be no sources listed in here. So I can hit the plus button, or I could right click and select add. And these are all my sources. These are all the things that OBS will pull in. So right now you can see I'm pulling in my video capture device. That's my talking head in the corner. I've got display capture because it's looking at my computer screen. And I got an audio input capture already in there. And you can't tell by looking at this, but you can tell by seeing that they're in here in the sources box. Matter of fact, you can see what happened there too. When I'm overlapping it with my cursor, you can see them highlighting, except for the audio, but you can see my video capture said, hey, I'm over here. And my display capture picked up the whole display. It's really wide. It's a little weird because I got one of those ultra wide monitors. But yeah, so if I want to add anything else, I can go through and click on it and select another source. So we'll just go ahead and do an image. So that's the image, and it's going to put it right there. I can highlight it, move it around. So now that image is placed in the scene called main. And if I go to these other scenes, I won't necessarily see any of these sources in those other scenes. I do have some in there, but every scene that I create, kind of like think of a movie. If you create a scene, it's going to have it's going to have things in that scene that might only be relevant to that scene, and it's whatever they want in there. It's whatever they put in there. So I can create different scenes with different pieces of information. This one here, if it had that image, and as you can see, I was dragging that tick in the corner. That allowed me to resize it and move it to wherever I want. I can let it overhang, kind of hide some of it. If I brought in a color source, where was that? There it is, color source. And pick a color. And I can drag it, put it wherever I want. You can see it gives me some of that flexibility too. Puts it right there. Now if you look, it's covering my image. So I'm going to go ahead. This is what another little feature. See the little arrows, up and down arrows. I can move that color source. Whatever's on top these are like layers. So whatever's on top is going to be the top layer. So if I move that down, you can see what it did is it moved it below the image. And if I move it down again, it'll end up getting behind my desktop, my display capture. So when it ends up happening where you end up hiding some of the things that you don't want to, it might be just because they're out of order. And if I decided I didn't like it, I could either delete it by hitting the minus button, or I could just turn off the look. See, if I click the little eyeball, it comes and it goes. So those are little features that you can create. Let's say if I had this as the scene that I wanted, but I at times won't want that schematic up there, I could make a duplicate scene of this, main, duplicate, it's called main 2, and then maybe just turn those off, where I turn my image and the color source off. So that way if I was going between main and main 2, you can see it's coming and going. I covered sources, and you can play around with that. All these different things are different sources. Audio input is the microphone. Audio output is if you're recording maybe something like a webinar that's being played on the computer. You can record the audio, so anything that's coming through the speakers would also be recorded. And the neat thing is a lot of that you can, like if I go ahead and turn that on, you can see I have a volume control. So there's no audio coming out right now. That's the reason why I don't see anything. But if there was sound or something like that coming out, I can actually change the audio control on it so I can make it quiet or make it louder. I can actually, through the settings tab, I can make it even louder than what the bar goes to its max. Or I can just mute it. I can turn it completely off. We can also see that there's media source listed. Now, a media source is just something like an audio clip or a video clip. And when I open that up, you can see it automatically says create new media source number 3. And then below it, you can see it says media source and the media source 2 under add existing. So if I already have a video in there and I want to use that same video over, I can select it and hit OK, and it would just insert that video in there. That's really the way you should do it. But if you are picking a new video that's on there that you haven't already loaded into OBS, you'll click OK, then it'll bring up your browse dialog, and you'll go through and try to find a video or something that you might have pulled in, and it'll automatically bring that in as soon as I click OK. Now it'll bring in the audio for that, so I'm going to go ahead and turn that down, or I can go ahead and mute it by clicking the mute button right there. I can resize it and put it anywhere I want, and I could even take it away. I could just hit the little eyeball button there. That turns it off. I can turn it back on to bring it back. So this is just a way to bring in a media source. Kind of a neat little feature that if you already have a video recorded, and the neat thing about that too is, I'll show you, under properties you can change the speed. So like what I would do in my classes at times is I would have an overhaul video where I take something apart, but I can create a video of me observing that video of somebody or me taking something apart. So that way I would speed it up so it would go through it quick and we can make comments quick and it wouldn't take as long to cover that information. But so that's a feature. You can bring in a media source. And let's see, what else did we have there? We've got NDI source. I'll talk more about that later and actually bring that into a different clip. The NDI source is going to be something related to bringing in cell phone footage from somebody calling you that has NDI, using an NDI sourced program like Skype. And also you can view desktops of other computers that you have OBS installed on. It's pretty neat. It's really cool. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but that's going to be a separate video. You can even bring in a different scene. So if you had a scene, you can add one of your scenes as a source into a separate scene. That's not that makes any sense, but and then there's also text. I can bring in text if I want to type something, a name of somebody or a title, whatever I want to do. I can. It's just a simple little text editor. Hello, and you can change the font size, the color, and all that stuff, and it installs it. Probably should have made it something other than white. Oops. It's a tendency of grabbing whatever you click on. And so yeah, if you have a simple little text editor, you could always bring that in as an image too. If you have a special fancy font or some word art or something like that, you can save that as a transparent image and bring it in through our source of right there, image. So a lot of different features. Also this video capture, that's me, and that the video capture is already in there. And that's kind of one of the things that makes this better than things like just your traditional capture devices. Like here, I can apply filters. And under the filters, you can see I've got chroma key on there. If I turn it off, you can see I'm using a green screen. So by using chroma key, I can delete my background if I've got a green screen. I got crop and pad. If I had a wide angled camera that's catching too much of the room, I could actually go through and double click on that and I can crop out some of the image. Obviously I'm zoomed in, so I wouldn't necessarily do that on this one, but I could go through and crop out the camera footage that I've got going on. So that way you can kind of narrow it down. It works well too if you've got a green screen that's not very big. So that way you can get rid of the parts that the green screen behind you isn't picking up on, or the camera's not picking up on the green. You know what I mean. So yes, all those different features right there. Those are all different sources for a scene, and every one of these scenes can have different sources. So that way when you're clicking between the different scenes, you're going to get different appearances. One of the last things I want to talk about is settings, is the settings menu. And when you first started this thing up, there's a good chance you went through and did the auto configuration wizard where it looked at your machine and saw how it would perform, so it would give you some recommended starting points. And you can go in and tweak and adjust some of those things. They've got the different themes depending on what you like. You can change that around. I don't know, I kind of like the default one, so I'll leave it at that. But if you're a streamer, you can go through and enter your stream key in there and what streaming service that you end up using. They got quite a few that are available. You can see these are all the streaming services that they have preloaded in there, which makes it nice. If you're just doing screen recording, obviously this is nothing that you're going to want to have to mess with. And as a matter of fact, if you're just doing screen recording and so forth, you don't really need to mess with any of this stuff. This is just kind of allowing you to tweak the settings. The output, I usually run this at about 4,000 kbps. That's about the minimum that you want for quality. And I save it, the recording format is an MP4. I think it's defaults to an MKV, which is still fine. But I just use MP4. It gives you a warning down here that if you have it set to MP4 and the power shuts off, you're not going to get a recoverable file. But if you have it set at I believe at the MKV, it will go ahead and it's basically finalizing it as it goes. So you can recover those if you lose power. But I'm not really too concerned with that for what we do and for what I do here. The video right here, all this stuff is grayed out because I'm recording as we go. But if I wasn't recording, these would be selectable and highlightable. You probably won't need to get into this. For basic settings, you definitely won't need to get into this. If you do, it'd probably be just making sure your video bitrate is set up high enough and you are saving as an MP4. And you can see right here in the middle, the recording path. You might want to adjust that. That will tell you where your recordings are going to be going to. and you can change that to whatever folder you want. And so that's basically it on the settings. Not too much that the basic user is going to want to change in there. So keep your eye open for some additional videos, because I'm going to show you some other programs like this NDI output settings. And when you install NDI on your machine, as I mentioned, you can bring in other displays into your machine, other computers, or even cell phone footage. But you need to go through and do a setup on both machines with OBS and NDI. You don't have to do that for the cell phone, but you have to do that if you're trying to link up with a different computer. And as I mentioned before, that is a great little feature where I can just bring in the desktop display of another PC right there into this and create a scene that's just specific for that, and it works great. I'm also going to show you a video on UpDeck. It is a free program that allows you to control all those scenes from your cell phone. So instead of physically having to come over and click on these different scenes, what you can do is you link your phone to your computer and you're able to control it. They do make components like this, which is a Stream Deck from Elgato, where you can assign different scenes to different buttons or even different sound effects or any of that kind of stuff. But this program called UpDeck that you can put on your phone does everything that does, and it's right there where you push buttons on your phone to change scenes, and it's free and it works great. So I want to do a video on that. That thing's awesome. So anyway, keep your eye out for those videos, and let me know if you want to learn anything specific or in particular about OBS. Hopefully I'll be able to answer it, and have a good one.